And I suppose Tony Visconti is the key name for fans because you haven't worked together for, what,
since 1980, in a major way. And the last album we did together was Scary Monsters, but we've done so many really good pieces together. Low and Heroes, of course, Young Americans album, even the Man Who Sold the World. Sorry, I'm exhausted. Going on exhaustion here.
But was there a conscious attempt to try and re-evoke a sense of those times?
No, that's absolutely what we didn't want to do, and that's why it was very important to me to make sure that we had some very good musical structures before we went in, so that we didn't kind of lazily dip back into what we'd already done. So I spent a lot of the early part of last year making sure that we had quite strong songs to work with before we went in.
And how did you write? I mean, do you still write in the same way that possibly 30 years ago with a guitar? Does it start with simple words, melodies?
I think I've got different ways of writing now. I seem to have collected different process. And it really depends on the project at hand. It seems to me that I have three basic types. I've got a narrative, literary-oriented kind of album, which is very much about crafted songs. There's something that's more experimental, which is more interested in playing around with hybridizations or juxtapositions, and the music is not necessarily secondary, but it's a support to the ideas, so it's more experimental. So you would get things like Low out of that, or Outside in the mid-90s. And there are other things which definitely are written for the stage, and more kind of theatrical things, where the motivation and the momentum for the thing comes from what I'm seeing in my mind for the stage itself, and that would produce the obvious things like Diamond Dogs and indeed Ziggy itself. So within there, that's a kind of a palette that I work from, and an album I'll kind of decide up front if it's going to be A, B or C, and then modified by the other type. So this one was very much the first A, narrative, straightforward, with elements of B, but very little of C.
But it's less experimental, sonically, musically, it's less
That's what I mean.
experimental than those albums, Earthling and Outside, that
absolutely.
You made in the 90s.
It is about songwriting in a very straightforward fashion, and that's what I felt that Tony and I should use as a kind of an armature for what we wanted to do. And I think indeed for us, I mean, it's a very satisfying album. I think that, even in the mixing stage, we regarded it as a success. You know, it really fulfilled all my expectations of what we could do together. It's not reliant on the past, but yet it has a very signature style. I think you can tell by listening to it that it was made by myself and Tony.
Absolutely,
there's something about it.
But you jumped in when I said, "Are you trying to evoke a sense of the past?"
Yeah.
And said, "Absolutely not." And yet there are lyrical references, aren't there? There are the things that would spark off in the mind of the
Well, you know
listener.
what? I think that I mean, personally, I feel that I've consistently written about the same subjects for over 35, nearly 40 years. There's really been no room for change with me. It's all despondency, despair, fear, isolation,
and spaceships.
abandonment.
What is it with spaceships?
Well, it's an interior dialogue that you manifest physically. You know, I mean, it's my little inner space, isn't it? Writ large. I wouldn't dream of getting on a spaceship. It'd scare the shit out of me. I have absolutely no interest or ambition to go into space whatsoever. I'm scared going down the end of the garden.
There is a song called Gemini. I took a trip on a Gemini spaceship, which is a cover version, actually.
It is, yeah. It's actually an old muse of mine, a character called the legendary Stardust Cowboy, who was a stablemate in the late 60s on Mercury Records, and chief executive over at Mercury, called Ron Obelman, quietly and conspiratorially put these 3 singles in my hand and said, "Hey Dave, you like weird shit, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I love weird shit, yeah." He said, "Well, this is the weirdest we got." And he gave me these wonderful anarchic singles by this artist, legendary Stardust Cowboy, and I completely fell in love with him. I thought he was just terrific. So much so that I nicked his name for Ziggy Stardust.
And was he a musical influence as well?
Not really.
I mean,
if you'd heard the records,
yeah.
They are out there. I guess he would be a comfortable kind of stablemate to someone like Wildman Fisher, or one of those kind of Zappa throwouts in the mid-60s.
Art rock.
Well, he's more than that. He has great integrity, He has no idea that any judgments will be made on what he does or delivers. There is an incredible naivety to him. He really is solidly outside. He is an outside artist. He's quite spectacularly outside. And he's on at Meltdown, as it happens.
Which I want to talk about a little bit later.
All right,
but
we'll
let's
get
just-
there.
But, I mean, I mentioned there are lyrical
Yeah.
references to your past, but there's
Yeah.
one key moment, I think, where, to my ears, you're playing a stylophone, and that
Yeah.
has to be the first time since Space Oddity, which is more than 30 years ago.
It must be. I
And
can't...
That must, but that was a reference.
Do you know what? Actually, no, it's not. Why I started using that is that I did a thing as a cover song for a collection of Who songs written by Townsend, and a few months ago, last year? Oh, I don't know.
You did pictures of
My memory is a lousy conveyance of any kind of information. It was we did the song Pictures of Lily, and on there I dragged the stylophone out. Somebody had sent me one. I wish I could say it was my actual original, but somebody from England had sent me one with the original Rolf Harris boxing on it. I was absolutely delighted. I hadn't seen the thing since 69, 70, or whenever it was. So I used it as the solo instrument for Pictures of Lily, with, I thought, great results. I thought it was tremendously impactful. And so I said, I really should start using this again on something. So I put it in my collection of old synthesizers, and I've got a lot of old stuff that I've kept over the years that I really dragged out for this album.
But it is only you and Rolf who have had hits with the stylophone.
It really, yes, me and Rolf, we're doing a collection next year of, we're just going to choose our favourite songs, and Rolf and I are going to, maybe we won't, eh? Maybe we shouldn't even think about that. Maybe that was a terrible idea.
You didn't, when you were playing the stylophone on Space Oddity, it didn't have the little picture of Rolf on there at the time, did it? Was it a Rolf Harris stylophone?
I think maybe so that my ego wouldn't get bruised, as one does get very bruised at 19. I think they just sent it to me without any packaging, if I remember rightly. I certainly don't remember seeing Rolf Harris's face on it.
Now that was, we are going back more than 30 years, or just over 30 years.
Yeah, we actually recorded it in very early 69. Then it was all suddenly, oh, the Americans are going to launch a space, rush, and they kind of got it out.
But even within that first single, and it was a classic pop single, you were still adopting a persona. You were still playing a character there. Where did that start from? Was it the idea of...
No, I would disagree there. I mean, as the singer, I don't think I'd gotten that far into the idea of characterization for myself. What I was keen on doing was writing in such a way that it would lead me into writing some kind of rock musicals, which is really, I think, more than anything else, probably what I really wanted to do in the late 60s. I think I wanted to write a new kind of musical, and that's how I saw my future at the time.
it really was exploring the theatricality of pop, because people retrospectively say
absolutely
it was just-
that. Yes, it was that. Yeah, but I was still only kind of being an interpreter of a song at that time. I still was sort of David Bowie. The real characterization really didn't kick into the Ziggy.